Okay, everyone, good morning. My name is Christopher Boyd. I'm with the Association of Arizona Food Banks. I'm here with my colleague, Monique Cordova. We're going to be presenting to you today on increasing school breakfast participation. This is an ADA-approved training. The professional learning code is in the bottom right. If you're having any issues with getting that approved by ADA, please let one of us know. We did try and check in with them beforehand to see if it was permissible for us to use this as an approved training, and they said it was. So hopefully that code should work for you. A couple of housekeeping things today. I'm going to ask that everyone please keep their microphones muted throughout the duration of the presentation. We will have a question time at the end of the presentation, and you can use the question box or the chat box to go ahead and enter your questions in that way. We are fortunate enough today to have Naomi Borboa, who is a food services director from Southgate Academy. She's going to be, she gave a pre-recorded audio recording that I'll be playing later in the session, and then she will be available to respond to questions using the chat box. So please do save your questions for the end of the webinar. If there's any technical issues you're having with the webinar, please send us a message through the chat box, and one of us will try to look into the issue. There are glitches that happen from time to time with these types of programs, so we just ask you to bear with us. In addition, we do also ask at the end of the presentation, there is going to be a post survey that will be emailed to you. We ask that you please take the time to fill it out and give us your feedback. So we really appreciate that. We want to be able to provide you with some useful trainings in the future, related to school breakfast and the National School Lunch Program. And so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started today. And so I'll start off here with our agenda. So we're going to talk about who we are as an organization. We're going to talk about why does school breakfast matter. We're going to give you 3 scenarios. These scenarios are obviously fake schools, but we used examples from real schools that we've spoken with over the last year. And then we're going to get into a breakfast success story, and that'll be Ms. Borboa, who will be giving a pre-recorded audio segment on some of her best practices for her breakfast program that she incorporates. Then we'll get into final thoughts, and then the questions and post-survey. We do understand that your time is limited, so if you need to leave after the final thoughts section, we totally understand. Just please make sure you get a chance to fill out the post-survey. So we're the Association of Arizona Food Banks, and we're based in Phoenix. I'm based in the Tucson area, and then my colleague Monique is based in the Phoenix area, so we do outreach throughout the state. And our mission is because healthy people and communities prosper and flourish, we promote public awareness, build coalitions of partnerships, engage in advocacy to influence public policy, and support food banks to achieve a hunger-free Arizona. And so we provide direct support to member food banks through logistics assistance, childhood hunger initiatives, and state advocacy work. Our child and youth outreach team is consisted of Monique and myself, and we partner with Share Our Strength. They're a national nonprofit based in DC. And so they're an anti-hunger organization that partners with various organizations throughout the country to look at ways to fight childhood hunger as one of their initiatives. And so we're fortunate enough to be able to have that partnership with them. And as a result of that, a couple of the different focus areas that we work on here in the state is working with schools on their school breakfast program. We also inform schools about the CEP program, also known as community eligibility. We also talk with sponsors and with sites about expanding the summer feeding program, which many of you, I'm sure, are aware of. So we're going to go ahead and do a quick poll here. I'm going to go ahead and launch this. Bear with me. It may exit you out of the PowerPoint just briefly while I launch this poll. And really what we're looking to ask is, does your school have a breakfast program in place?
These pie charts in front of you are the slides that go with the talking points that I just mentioned to you. So it's, according to the Department of Education, 93% of schools in Arizona that are on the National School Lunch Program participate in the school breakfast program. And according to FRAC, out of 100 free and reduced price students, only 52 eat school breakfast in Arizona. So we're in the middle of the pack. We can still improve our participation in the state. Okay, next. Okay, why does school breakfast matter? First, it is one of the most effective ways to address food insecurity among children. And food insecure households are those that have difficulty at some time during the year providing enough food for all of their members due to a lack of resources. According to Feeding America, which is a network our food banks are a part of, which measures food insecurity annually through its Map the Meal Gap report, more than 26% of children in Arizona are considered food insecure. This translates into more than 434,000 children in Arizona. The map here shows county-level statistics in some of Arizona's 15 counties. Maricopa and Pima counties experience 25% food insecurity among children. And in some of the outlying counties, it's even higher than that. So, for example, in Apache County, it is 41% food insecurity among the children in that county. And then it also shows Yuma and Mojave County. Okay. And another reason why school breakfast matters is related to a child's educational achievement. School breakfast can have an impact on academic performance. Children who eat breakfast are more likely to have higher test scores and attend more days of school. And students who attend more days of school are more likely to graduate from high school. Okay, now we're going to move on to the first of our scenarios. So although the scenarios that Chris and I present are meant for illustration only, they are based on meetings and contacts that we have had with actual schools. So we're going to call the first example Neptune Elementary School. It's a K through 5 grade school at a large public school district that directly operates food service. It provides a traditional breakfast service in a small cafeteria in one 30-minute time block from 7:15 to 7:45 a.m. In contrast, staff staggers lunch service into 3 30-minute blocks to better manage the space limitations. The food services director has surveyed families and found that some have struggled to pay for both breakfast and lunch, and some have difficulty dropping off students early enough to eat breakfast before the first period. So what could a school with this, under this scenario, do to reinvigorate their program? The barriers in this example include small cafeteria space, additional costs borne by students' families, and early service time. A couple options come to mind to address these types of barriers. The first is universal breakfast, also known as non-pricing, and breakfast in the classroom. Okay, so what is traditional breakfast in the cafeteria? It's traditional breakfast in the cafeteria. This school is providing that. It offers benefits such as the ability to provide hot and cold meal options, and it also allows schools to consolidate meal operations into one space, which can work well if you have adequate cafeteria space. Okay. Some of the potential limits are that the students can only eat in one location. The students have to arrive before school to take advantage of the offering, and it tends to have lower participation than alternative models, which we will be discussing. Of all the models, a traditional breakfast, it has the lowest participation rates. So the keys to success here, though, are to have an adequate cafeteria facility, sufficient cafeteria staff, and have the students arrive early to school. One of the options that can be used if you're using a traditional breakfast in the cafeteria model is to use a universal breakfast model, also called non-pricing. Under this scenario, you are not charging any students for breakfast. It is a good option for schools that meet a high threshold of free and reduced price eligible students. Generally, it could be a good option for schools that have 70% and higher free and reduced price eligible students. If the percentage is at that level, then the federal reimbursements that school receives may be sufficient to cover the cost of the overall breakfast program. Thus, under this option, no student would have to pay for breakfast. Another option for schools that could be limited in their cafeteria space or that qualify for universal breakfast and non-pricing is to go ahead and move breakfast into the classroom. So what is it? It's a model that allows students the opportunity to eat in their first period class and have the items delivered directly to class. The advantage of this model is that it lessens the pressure to arrive to school early for breakfast. It also reduces the potential stigma associated with school breakfast and generally works very well for the elementary school population. As with all models, there are some potential limitations, but with proper planning, they can be addressed. So some of the potential limitations that would need to be addressed with proper planning is dealing with the waste that's in the classroom, since the children are eating in the classroom, potential resistance from teachers and administrators due to a belief that it could take away from their class time. And it's also a less popular model among older students. So it's important to get buy-in from the stakeholders before proceeding with alternative service models.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and take over for scenario 2. So we're going to be talking here about Pluto Charter School. They serve grades 6 to 12. And similar to Neptune Elementary, they use a traditional cafeteria model where breakfast is served from 7:30 to 8. But unlike Neptune, they use a caterer. However, kids don't want to show up early to breakfast and frequently complain about the food quality and the limited breakfast choices. So what can the school do to improve participation? So if you guys can think for a few seconds here, looking through this scenario, what are some barriers that you're seeing here? And then maybe think of a solution or two before I go ahead and flip over to the next slide. So in looking at some of the barriers from this scenario, we see that student preferences are a big one. We see that timing is a big one, and we also see that there's limited meal choices that are available based on the student feedback. A couple of solutions that we came up with here is the grab-and-go model for flexibility, having the ability to set up kiosk in the front entrance of the school and allow students to pick up breakfast and take it to eat, like in the school courtyard or picnic tables or even in their classroom. I do want to differentiate grab and go in the classroom versus breakfast in the classroom. With grab and go, you're picking it up typically at a kiosk somewhere and then taking it to your classroom. Breakfast in the classroom, in terms of that model, it tends to be delivered directly to the classroom. Another solution we came up with is to survey students on foods that they would be more likely to eat. Another idea we came up with was to work with the caterer here on trying to extend a longer menu cycle. Instead of the same menu options being offered, maybe with a 3-week cycle, you could offer more variety on a longer menu cycle. So continue to have those conversations with the caterer regularly. And then finally is to work with the administration on a new schedule to accommodate more students. Really find someone within the administration who is a champion of school breakfast and is kind of willing to gather the troops to really have that kind of a conversation, because I know there's a lot of moving parts in your schools to make something like that work instead of in terms of trying to create a new morning schedule for students. So looking at the grab and go model, what is it? Students grab breakfast and go somewhere to eat. That's pretty much it in its essence, right? They can decide when and where students, the schools actually can decide when and where students may eat, which offers flexibility. And some examples, as we pointed out earlier, they can pick up food at mobile kiosk and go to the courtyard out front 15 minutes before class, or they can pick it up on the way into class and eat it in their classroom. Some pros of this model is the high level of flexibility for service times. Typically with older kids, sometimes they're not always hungry first thing in the morning. So maybe look at the idea of, can we offer it maybe after first period, kind of when they're between their first and second class for kids who still might be hungry. So you have those flexible periods to offer it in. It can be eaten at any designated school site. So talk with your administration to set up a couple of designated school sites on school grounds where kids would be able to eat this meal. It tends to be more popular with middle and high school students, and then we see a general increase in breakfast participation at most schools that incorporate this model. Some potential limitations are that teachers sometimes are reluctant to allow food in the classroom, that's similar to breakfast in the classroom, and that there's sometimes more coordination that's going to be involved amongst staff for service and cleanup, especially if you designate multiple sites for the students to eat. So the keys are flexible administration and staff, proper location of the kiosk, and then making sure that you have available janitorial staff in the AM hours. So getting into our third and final scenario, this is Jupiter Charter School. They're a K-12 school that has a grab-and-go breakfast program provided by a caterer, and they're experiencing very low participation. They have 2 grab-and-go kiosks outside of the main office due to no cafeteria space. They're unable to do breakfast in the classroom due to concerns from teachers and administrators who feel it cuts into class time. They only have one staff member to oversee the program who is frequently tied up with other job responsibilities and struggles to collect free and reduced applications from families. How can the school boost participation? So once again, I'll give you guys a little bit of time here to think through this one and come up with a couple, what you see as barriers, and then maybe a couple of solutions. And I think we understand that part of this is really a review for you guys, that some of you guys are pretty familiar with the alternative models. But I think we want this to be an opportunity for you guys to kind of get those creative juices going and start to really think critically about what you can do for your specific school to boost participation and what things you can try. So I'll go ahead and flip the slide here. Some barriers is that there's limited staff, there's no cafeteria space, there's stakeholder resistance in the breakfast in the classroom model, and there's a lack of promotion, it seems like, as well for the program. Some solutions: survey your stakeholders on timing issues and why the students choose not to use the grab-and-go kiosk. You know, could it be that they're just in a bad location? Could it be that the times that the kiosks are available don't coincide with when they arrive to class? Find those things out. Another thing to do when there's a lot of stakeholder disagreement going on is to hold a community meeting, kind of get everyone involved and talk about what the different issues are to get different perspectives. Another option here that's great is to identify a champion at the school who can promote the program. I know many of you at some of the smaller charter schools, it can feel overwhelming because you have, you know, NSLP to balance, and then you have all these other responsibilities to balance as well. So if you can find someone within your school who can help doing something as simple as putting up flyers or helping to send out letters to parents or hold community events, you know, that's huge. Just find someone in your school who's going to be your champion. Another thing to consider here is a special assistance provision program to help reduce administrative burden. And so I'm going to go ahead and let Monique talk a little bit more about what those special assistance provision programs are.
Thank you, Chris. There's a number of special assistance provision programs, and their goal is to reduce the administrative burden that the NSLP can have on school staff. And other benefits. The community eligibility provision, which is a provision that Chris and I have been promoting in cooperation and in conjunction with the Arizona Department of Education. It allows the school to provide free breakfast and lunch to all students for eligible schools, and it eliminates household applications. CEP is based, your eligibility is based on your direct certification rates, which you have to report to the Department of Education every spring. And so the main application time is during the summer after you report that information to the Department of Education. And we're happy to provide any school that is not familiar with CEP with information on that provision. Another option that's been around a little bit longer than CEP is Provision 2. This option allows schools to provide free meals to all students and eliminates household applications in year 2 of operation. Year 1 of operation, you are required to provide free meals, but that's considered your base year, and you pretty much operate very similar to how you would operate normally by collecting applications and getting data for your reimbursement rates for the subsequent years 2, 3, and 4. But overall, by taking advantages of these provisions, if you qualify, you should see an increase in your breakfast program participation.
Okay, thanks, Monique. So for our next section here, we're going to go ahead and play a breakfast success story. This is going to be Naomi Borboa. She's the food services director with Southgate Academy in Tucson. It's a pre-recording. What's going to happen is I'm going to go ahead and load the recording. It will exit you out of the PowerPoint, but you should be able to still hear the recording. And then at the conclusion of the recording, I'll go ahead and enter back into the PowerPoint, and we'll finish the rest of the presentation. So bear with me here while I get everything loaded up. It should just take a couple of seconds. Hopefully I don't get booted out again. Otherwise, Monique will hopefully be gracious enough to take over for me. So here we go. Hi, everyone. So I'm with Naomi Borboa. She's the Food Services Director at Southgate Academy in Tucson, Arizona. Naomi, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris, for having me.
You serve a wide variety of different students, and you use different breakfast models that you tailor to the types of students that you serve. Can you describe a little bit more about the breakfast models that you employ for your students at the school?
Yes, we are an alternative charter school, and we serve grades kindergarten through 12th grade. We are located on the south side of Tucson, Arizona, and our demographics include a high percentage of free and reduced students. Our population consists of a large population of Hispanic and Native American students. Due to these facts, we actually have implemented 3 different breakfast models that we actually implement throughout the school year. Our first one that we have is called Breakfast in the Classroom. Our breakfast is served during a time that is appropriate for our teachers. In the morning, it's usually about the first 15 minutes of classroom time. Our nutrition service staff actually delivers the meals to the classroom, and we provide a breakfast that is easy to deliver, and it's a user-friendly breakfast for both teacher and students. We actually do the cleanup ourselves, so there's no extra work for the teacher or the students involved. We keep it as minimal as possible. The types of food that we serve in the breakfast and classrooms are cheese sticks, yogurt, fresh fruit, and breakfast burritos. Our students seem to really enjoy this time, this breakfast time with the teachers and with us. And we find it highly effective time of socialization with our younger students. Another breakfast model that we actually implemented last year was a grab and go. And this grab and go, we actually do this during the warmer months. We will set up outside and we offer a grab and go breakfast. Again, the offerings that we serve are about the same as what we give out in the breakfast in the classroom. They're easy to-go items. We'll give out a bagel. We'll do the breakfast burritos. We offer the milk and juice along with the main entrees. Another one that we actually do is the traditional cafeteria. And during the winter months, we put a little twist on it, and we open up our doors at 7 o'clock in the morning. We actually have movies available to our students, and our students are actually able to hang out and socialize from 7 o'clock to 8:45 in the morning. We believe that the cafeteria is a safe place for them to interact with each other and with staff.
Do you have some statistics available about what your average daily participation rate looks like for the students? And why do you feel like this number tends to be higher maybe than other schools that have breakfast programs in the state?
Okay, our average daily participation rate for the last 3 months is about 380. And we offer a variety of breakfast food items along with having our open door policy for our students, and they're able to hang out with their friends during this time. We really focus on the needs of our students along with what they actually want, what they want happening in the morning during this time. And I believe that's part of the reason why our breakfast rate is so high.
Naomi, what percentage about of the students tend to eat breakfast? I think last time we spoke it was right around 80%.
Yes, we average between 50 to 82% for breakfast participation.
I understand that you're on the CEP program. Can you tell us a little bit more about how this program has helped your school breakfast operations?
Yes, I can. Our breakfast participation has actually increased up to the 80% mark, and prior years show our participation rate in the 30%. The participation rates undoubtedly translate into the classroom, and this is where it's so important having this particular program in your school. Because of the program, we are able to offer the different breakfast models based on the needs of our students and based on the different times of the year. And the best thing about it is that the paperwork that is involved isn't as tedious as it was before. It allows us more time to actually get into the grit of things and see exactly what our students' needs are instead of sitting there working the paperwork. And that's one of the things that I really love about this program.
What are some of the ways that you promote the program, and do you think this helps to increase your breakfast participation?
Yes, I do believe that to promote your program does effectively increase your breakfast participation, and we have the numbers to prove it too. I'll give you an example, and this is one program, this is one event that we actually participate in, and we have received numerous accolades about this event. We actually participate in the kindergarten roundup. As part of the event, we actually provide a mini lunch sampling for our visiting students and parents. All staff is on hand during this event, and we actually introduce ourselves and the program through media and printed materials. We actually have a PowerPoint presentation that we show while they're having their little mini lunch, and we actually provide different materials such as the CEP program material brochures, along with menus and other offerings that we give to our students. We also participate in the open house and parent-teacher conferences. We actually set up a table and provide information for our families. Once in a while, we do provide our offerings that we give out for our snack program that we actually have, and the students and parents seem to really love the different foods that we happen to offer.
And in closing today, what would you tell schools that might be struggling with their breakfast programs or consider maybe even just getting rid of them altogether due to low participation?
Mm-hmm. I really believe that the food service department plays a vital role in the nutritional needs of our students. And it's not an easy road. Food service department is a very hard area to work in, but it's so rewarding in itself. You know, our ultimate goal is to serve the needs of our community that we're in. And I know the struggle is there, but we just can't give up. We just cannot give up. We need to be able to support each other in this endeavor. We need to realize that we are making a difference in the lives of the students and the communities that we service, because that's the goal. The ultimate goal is making a difference in these children's lives for our school. And we keep that goal right there in front of us. So when we do want to give up, we're not going to do it. It's not an option. I suggest that you be creative and ask for help. And you suggest seek the advice of your program specialist at the Arizona Department of Education. They are there to help, and they will offer you whatever they can give you. Research and find the ways to offer your breakfast programs that suit your particular needs. I really believe that's very, very important. Surveys for your lunch program are very important. See what the kids want. See what they desire. See what the parents actually want for their children, and make it a collaboration of everybody in the community so you can make a difference in your program and be successful. And what you do is you're going to offer the needs of your students for your community. I would also suggest to talk to your vendors and see how they can help you. There's vendors out there that have a vast knowledge of resources available to you as a school, and they will help. I've seen them do that.
Naomi, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Okay, so I think everyone should be able to see the PowerPoint again. Hopefully you found the conversation between myself and Naomi very helpful, and you'll have the opportunity at the end of the webinar to ask her or myself or Monique some questions. And see if you can try and use the question box for that. If not, some of you may have access to the chat box, but try and use the question box first if you can for that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Monique really quick, and she's going to talk a little bit about some operational and stakeholder challenges.
What we're presenting here in this slide are just a summary of some of the challenges that we presented in the scenario. So we talked about cost to families, facility challenges, an early service time, balancing student preferences and good nutrition, some limited meal options, lack of school staff, stakeholder resistance, and lack of program awareness. So hopefully the scenarios provided you with some ideas for how you might be able to address some of these challenges. I think with proper planning, any challenge can be addressed. Another challenge that Chris and I have heard about during our conversations with schools are caterer challenges. Not being satisfied with a caterer, wanting to find a new caterer. Our scenarios didn't address those challenges, but we know that they do exist, and we're trying to get more information about what can be done to help schools procure the caterer and vendors that can best meet their needs.
Thanks, Monique. So we'll go ahead and get into final thoughts here. So a couple of things to keep in mind as we wrap up is to survey and educate your stakeholders. That includes parents, administrators, students, janitorial staff, teachers. Really get everyone involved. Survey them on what potential barriers could be, what their thoughts are on these programs, and then really take the time to educate them on the school breakfast program and how it works as well. I think sometimes there's a real lack of understanding of how the program works. So I think that's an area where Monique and I can really help you develop a presentation or some content to be able to present to your board or to your administration about the school breakfast program that you're going to be offering. Another one is to offer choices to your students. This is something that Naomi does really well. She really mixes and matches her menus and her breakfast models throughout the year to tailor to the needs of the students. And Monique briefly mentioned that it's important to continue to work with your caterer to constantly tweak your menu offerings, and that as time goes on, Monique and I are going to continue to research more into best practices for how to work with your caterer. Some other ideas is to consider piloting an alternative breakfast model for a week during National School Breakfast Week. We know that it can be very difficult for many of you to offer non-pricing to your students if you don't have a high free and reduced percentage. However, National School Breakfast Week is a great time to look at, hey, maybe let's try doing breakfast in the classroom for a week to see if we can get a boost in participation, to kind of maybe get some momentum building. And if there's a lot of kids that do end up eating breakfast, say, hey, this worked really well this week. Is this something that maybe next school year we can look at into implementing? So that's really a great time to do it at. Another thing is that Naomi mentioned is to really work with your ADE specialist. I think one of the ways I've found in talking with schools that they're very beneficial is they can help you kind of see the cost picture behind things. So for example, if you're applying for a special assistance provision program, they can really help you work out the numbers and give you cost estimator worksheets to help you kind of see the big picture of, financially speaking, does this make sense or not? Because we know that's a very important part of the equation if you're going to be running a school breakfast program effectively. Promoting the program is pretty essential. You really need to find different avenues to promote your program. You need to really communicate regularly to your stakeholders about changes to the program. You need to put up flyers talking about new menu items and offerings, have students try the new menu offerings, have teachers talk about the benefits of breakfast to the students. You really need to take the time to find people who you can get involved to promote the program. I think that's a huge part of it. And make the students feel like breakfast is something that matters, and that it's a big deal, and that it's not just something that they should just skip, that it's an important part of the day, and there's the research behind it to show that ultimately it's going to benefit them in the long term. And then finally is to really ask other people for help. You're going to have a lot of resources out there to take advantage of. You have ADE, obviously. You have us here at AAFB to help you if you have any questions or concerns, if you want to look into a new breakfast model and you need some ideas. If you want us to come watch how you guys run a breakfast operation, we can give you some tips and some feedback. That's what Monique and I are here for. Another thing that we're looking to really do is to try and kind of build a network of school nutrition professionals throughout the state who can be a contact to you guys if you have more technical questions about how to operate your programs. And so, we want to offer as many resources to you as we can so that you don't feel, stuck and without answers on other things that you can do to try and boost participation for your programs. So now we'll go ahead and get into the questions section of the webinar. And so for those of you that need to go ahead and leave, thank you so much for your time. This is our contact information from Monique and I. If you ever need to reach out to us and get a hold of us, you can feel free to do so. And in the meantime, for everyone who wants to stick around, I'm going to ask that you please try and go ahead and type a question into the question box, and then I'll go ahead and read the question aloud, and then either myself or Monique will answer the question, or we will go ahead and send it off to Naomi, and she can respond via the chat box, and then we'll read her response. So, if you have to get going, thank you so much for your time today. But if you can stick around for a little while, or if you have a question or two, we have until right about 10 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and try and get through as many questions as we can today. So we'll go ahead and get started with that portion of it. Okay. So it looks like I do have one question in here about summer ideas. And can you be a little bit more specific in terms of specifically what in summer you're asking about? Okay, running a summer program. Okay, so are you looking to be a sponsor or a site? Okay, so the respondent here put that we are a site, but we may have to be a sponsor as well, since we have multiple sites. Sure, so that's a great question. So in terms of the summer program, Monique and I, what we do is we try to meet with different sponsors and sites throughout the state to build capacity and talk with them about different ways to expand their operations. It's great to start off as a site the first year or two, and then if you're taking on multiple sites, looking at becoming a sponsor. Some things to keep in mind with becoming a sponsor is that there's just going to be a lot more paperwork that's going to be involved and a lot more oversight. There's going to be meetings that you're going to have to attend up in Phoenix to get assimilated as a sponsor. And so we're happy to sit down with you and talk to you more about that. Naomi, if you have anything here to offer, I'm not sure what you guys do for summer, if you're a site or all, but if you have anything that you want to contribute, you can feel free to type in the chat box as well. So, but we're more than happy to meet with you individually to talk with you about some ideas for your summer program. So are there other questions or things that you might have for Naomi or myself or Monique? Please feel free to take the time to type that into the question box. Okay, so the next question that I see on here is, are there any ideas on teacher resistance to in-classroom food at the high school level? Naomi, do you want to take a stab at this and type up a response? So the question I'll read one more time is, any ideas on teacher resistance to in-classroom food for at the high school level? So what are some things that you've tried maybe, or ways that you've tried to talk with your teachers about how to allow food in the classroom? Another question I got on here while we're waiting for Naomi's response is, can we receive printed material on the webinar? And yes, we do have that available, and we can give that out to anyone. I think we're going to go ahead and put the webinar too on our website in some capacity. So there will be multiple different avenues that you'll have access to this information after the webinar today. So Naomi's response to the question about teacher resistance to in-classroom food for high school level is that she believes the participation is buy-in, and that she always involves her teachers whenever they're going to be preparing for the Breakfast in the Classroom program. So at the beginning of every school year, it sounds like that she gets the teachers involved to talk with them about what that's going to look like, and that they kind of hash out any issues at the beginning of the school year that might come up with respect to food waste or instructional time. I know has been another common complaint. And another thing that Naomi says that she does do is that she holds quarterly meetings for all of her stakeholders involved. So she tries to get, everyone in on the conversation at least quarterly to have those conversations to work through any barriers. Okay, so are there any other questions here before we wrap up? We still have about 10 more minutes. If for whatever reason you don't feel comfortable, writing a question in the question box today, feel free to send Monique and I an email, and we're happy to follow up with you in any capacity that we can to get your question answered. So. Okay, so it doesn't look like I see any more questions coming through. So if you have any more questions, like I said, please feel free to reach out to Monique or myself. These are our email addresses. Also, many of the Tucson schools that I met with, you have my direct contact information if you need to get a hold of me. We want to thank you all again for attending the webinar today. Please do take the time to fill out the post-webinar survey to give us any feedback on future trainings that you're interested in. Tell us how we did and what improvements we could make. And hopefully we can continue to offer you some helpful trainings in the future to help with your school meal operations. So I want to thank you so much again for coming today.
Thank you also, yes. This is Monique, and I want to thank you for your participation.
All right, thanks everyone. Take care.